its capital. And Mosul is the second biggest city in Iraq, and it's an ancient city. Both Syria and Iraq are very ancient civilizations. They go back thousands and thousands of years. And we had a problem, we asked ourselves, how can we show a timeline of what happened in Mosul without making it look as if the whole history of Mosul is about ISIS, about Daesh. And that's a problem, because in the outside world, in the West, everybody now, when they think of Syria and Iraq, they think about war, terrorism, destruction, horrible things. But of course, both Iraq and Syria have a huge history. And the timeline shows you that the history started thousands of years ago. Here's something at 2500 BC. And it goes through all of this huge period, and then we just had a few years when the city was occupied by ISIS, and then it was destroyed in the war to get rid of ISIS, in the bombing that had to happen to get ISIS out of the city. So you can look at this yourself afterwards, you can read all of the different things, but you'll see that throughout history, Mosul has been a city which has produced culture and art and music, all the things which ISIS didn't like and tried to close down. This is what Mosul has kept doing again and again and again throughout history. And then when we come to the screens, later on by yourselves, when I finish talking, you can come, and this is interactive, so you can press on things and it will take you to a place on the map and give you more information about what happened when ISIS occupied the city. Those are the three screens. Let's go over and look at Mosul, which are representative of other buildings. So the Meydan House was a traditional family home. Let me see if I can see what this was like in (1998). Is it going to work? Yeah, okay, so here is a reconstruction of what the place looked like. Oh, I've just gone back, sorry. But you can play with it yourself later, but it's like the headsets, that you can see what the place was like before it was destroyed, before ISIS came. Then you go to 2014 and you see what it was like. This is a reconstruction of what it was like when ISIS was there. ISIS turned this beautiful building, a beautiful traditional family home, into a prison. And they arrested people in the streets for wearing tight trousers, or for smoking a cigarette, or if a woman wasn't covering both eyes. For stupid things like this, they would arrest people, take them into these prisons, terrify them, threaten them with death, interrogate them, whip them, treat them to hang them from the walls, treat them to all kinds of terrible tortures. I won't go into the details, but nasty, horrible stuff. And then the buildings were destroyed, there was lots of bomb damage. They were destroyed in the bombing that happened to get rid of ISIS, to push ISIS out of the city. And now some of these buildings are being restored by UNESCO. And we have tried to capture the history of what happened there, firstly as a national memory for the Syrians and Iraqis, so that they have a means to reflect on what happened in this very dark part of our history, and secondly for the rest of the world, so the rest of the world can understand what happened in context. And also, as I said before, this is evidence which can be used in court. How did we reconstruct these buildings? How do we know what they were like in 2014 when ISIS was there? Two things. Firstly, forensic evidence. In some rooms we found that names had been scratched on the walls. That showed us that prisoners were held in these rooms and they'd scratched their names on the walls. Sometimes we found that ISIS had put hooks on the ceilings or on the walls to hang people from. So we knew that, okay, torture happened in this place. And we also, in some of the buildings, we found documents ISIS left behind. We at the ISIS Prisons Museum, we have over 70,000 documents which ISIS left behind in these buildings. And using these documents, we can learn a lot of information about who these terrorists were, who are the people that they arrested, what did they do to them, how did they interrogate them. we've found all of this information. And this has been used in court already in Germany. People have been sent to prison based on this evidence. It's recognized as evidence which can be used in court. The other thing that we did, later on when I've stopped talking, you can look at the witnesses speaking. We found as many witnesses as we could, people who were in these buildings, and we interviewed them in detail. And we also asked them who else was imprisoned at the same time as you. And we networked and we made contact with as many people as possible in order to talk to them. And then we cross-referenced their testimony. So if one man, only one person said, I was tortured in this room, and we didn't find any other evidence, we didn't necessarily trust that. But if we could find 3 or 4 or 5 witnesses who said we were tortured in this room and the furniture in the room was like this, okay, we can trust that. And we've based our 3D tours on the witness testimonies. And your teacher just asked me, how do you guard your own safety? And it is dangerous because ISIS still exists, the ideology still exists, the people who are in ISIS still exist. And in some cases they come out of the shadows and they kill people. So it's dangerous for us, but it's much more dangerous for these people who are usually still living in Mosul, or in the people that we interview who are still living in Syria and Iraq are really at danger. But they've given us permission to use their faces and their voices and their names. We've asked them, are you happy with this? And they've said yes, because we want people to know what happened. We want the truth to come out, and we want there to be accountability. Over here, ways of life all over Iraq and all over Syria. These are very multicultural societies, and they have been multicultural societies for hundreds and thousands of years. And ISIS didn't like that. ISIS wanted to stamp out difference and only have one type of person. So all of the churches in Mosul, ISIS took them over and they used them for their own purposes. And this one again, the Syriac church, was used as a prison. It was a place where they tortured people, killed people, terrified people. And they destroyed, as it says here, you can read it in French too, ISIS broke the altars and the crosses, it defaced the images of saints, the paintings, it destroyed the artwork that was in the church. And again, nowadays there is an attempt to try and rebuild. Again, over here we've got witnesses speaking, standing in the ruins of the building in which they were once imprisoned, talking about what happened to them. Very good. 2 more boys, if we have more.
Veuillez vous asseoir, les garçons. Ça c'est ça. C'est ça, on les commandes. Donc avec la gâchette ici, vous allez plus les images, vous allez plus sur la gâchette. Mais t'as un peu tu peux remplacer partout avec les cercles partout. Normalement il y a des maisons qui palais je suis libre de l'image et en français est-ce que tu vois des points blancs c'est cool. J'ai un truc sur la cachette. Il faut juste représenter ce titre avant et après un ou 3. Ok, ça marche.